Hey guys, cheers. Prost.
Prost. Cheers, buddy.
My
You in the
goodness.
house?
I'm in
It's
the house.
early for a beer.
Well,
Yeah,
It's
beer
early for a beer.
stein.
it's not early in Europe. It's 7 hours ahead. They drink beer all day during work. They work about 5 hours a day. So that's the mindset I'm in. They have 8 weeks vacation.
Manufacturers, what is your biggest headache? Is it measuring improving profitability, gaining efficiencies with AI and automation, maybe tightening up your cybersecurity, maybe getting your business ready to sell? At CLA, their goal is to know you and help you with challenges like these and more. Every day, CLA helps manufacturers tap into millions in revenue and cost savings, like one manufacturer that boosted capacity and revenues by 15 to 20%. Visit CLAconnect.com to hear real success stories and learn how you can grow your top and bottom line.
So your trip was good
It was awesome. Yeah, man. It's,
to the motherland?
yeah. So jokes aside, like, yeah, you know, that's the stereotype is that they don't work and they take tons of vacation and they have a cigarette and a coffee 5 times a day. But
Yeah.
I'm telling you, man, like I was in Switzerland at Triag Swiss Modular visiting my friend Biat, and holy cow, like they run such an efficient company. They have this Matsura that's been running 6 days a week, almost 24 hours a day for 15 years. They haven't changed the spindle
my gosh.
once. He's like, yeah, we never crashed
That's a
it.
testament.
I was like, dang. Yeah, it was pretty cool. So
Yeah.
good time.
Very good.
Yeah, I guess if you're running that efficient, you can work 5 hours a day.
Yeah, exactly. You can wear sandals to work.
Machines are. That's right.
Yeah.
I'm excited to dig back in with you guys. And Jess, what's up, Jess?
How's it going?
Yeah,
Glad to
Jess,
be
good to have you
guys.
back.
Yeah, thanks for having me back.
Yeah, that's good.
You bet. So yeah, in the last episode, we talked about sort of the setup of a QMS. We talked about how auditing works, you know, stage 1, stage 2, some of the theory behind it. And today we're getting into some more nuts and bolts of how to actually set up an efficient QMS, right? So if you've decided that you're going to have a shop that serves regulated industries, whether that's medical, aerospace, oil and gas, whatever, you know, you got to have a certification, and there are ways to do that efficiently and there are ways to do that less efficiently. So today we're really getting in the weeds on how to have an efficient QMS.
Awesome.
So, yeah. So Jess, what do you say is some of the principles? I guess we'll stick with some of the principle-based things for just a minute or two, and then get into some more tactical advice. But yeah, to have an efficient QMS, what do you need?
You need to have efficient processes for one. You need to identify the key processes that it takes to run your business from start to finish. You need to really take a look at those processes and establish consistent KPIs and quality objectives to keep track of those things throughout, whether you're going to review those monthly or quarterly or annually. It just depends on the business on how often that is or the frequency of that. But that will tell you over time how the processes are performing. And then also, once you start reviewing those things, you can track trends over time as well. So yeah, I would say a process approach is the best way to tackle everything. That's really what the standard is they're going to verify that the output of one process is the input of another one, and that there's a linkage between everything throughout the whole structure of the QMS, from gaining the opportunities to invoicing the customer and everything in between. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And because that is, like you said, starting from an opportunity to quote something, you know, that to me, and, you know, the whole, I love this idea of the inputs of one process feed and, you know, or the outputs of one feed into the inputs of another. And I know, Nick, that's something near and dear to your heart and your team's heart there, right? Your internal customers, that it really is it's the BMS, right? It's not just the QMS. It's not like we're just talking about quality assurance of checking the parts and making sure that's all good. We're making sure the entire system from quoting through invoicing is flowing smoothly. There's a closed loop kind of continuous improvement mindset and process to make sure that, you know, the estimating and sales team is giving really good feed, you know, downstream inputs into planning or an order entry or whatever it might be, right? So
Yeah, you said stream there, and I always think about, value stream mapping or mapping the process as like an essential part of automation. I talk about that a lot in Lights Out. Like, make sure you defined your process and you're ready to like map it so you can see how automation would impact. Like, automation could just make your problem worse if you automate something prior to the
for sure.
bottleneck. So yeah, I think we're process people. Manufacturing leaders are process people, and if you don't have a clearly defined process, that's almost always a good step one.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. And then, after you define all those processes, it's always really, really good to go through a risk register and analyze the risk for each process or each function of the business, where you can essentially do like a failure mode effects analysis on where you can score an RPN number for each thing. And then if it exceeds a certain threshold, then you can assign action items to see if those ideas and actions that you put into place can lower that RPN score based on.
Can you remind us what RPN means?
Risk priority number.
Risk priority number.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's like, what is the likelihood and what is the severity that something bad is going to happen here?
Yeah. So
how
it's
you
a
mitigate
little.
that?
Yeah, Paul. So it's a calculation of two numbers, which is the severity and the occurrence, where a failure mode effects analysis also includes detection, where a risk register pretty much just verifies it scores the severity of that failure point, and then it also scores the criticality of that with the RPN number. When you put both of those two numbers together with the occurrence and the severity, that calculation is what your RPN number is, and then you assign a threshold to where if anything goes above that RPN number, then you assign action items to it, and then try to reduce that.
Is that kind of a subjective thing? So, like, to put it in machine shop practical terms, like you have a new job you won, there's like a 2/10 flatness tolerance over like a 2-foot surface. Like, the likelihood that you're going to get it that flat easily is actually pretty low. So is that, but it might be high, it might be fairly high confidence for some shops and low for others based on what your specialty is. And so you'd say, you know what, I think it's like a 7 out of 10 that we're not going to be able to get this very flat on the first try. Is that?
That's a good question, Paul. Like, if all you did is like surface grinding or something like that, like, you might be more confident than somebody who does it as like, not their primary function. Yeah.
So is that how people should think about that, Jess?
Yeah, for sure. And it's good to review that at least a few times a year, because as time goes on, those new risks can pop up as very quickly. You want to document those things in there, and also assign either an action item to somebody, a responsible party or a key stakeholder, or assign just initiate a corrective action on it to see if you can get the top management to agree on an action item to put into place, and then evaluate that after maybe 6 months to see if the RPN number drops down, which is the idea. It's just incremental improvements is the idea of that risk management tool.
Mm-hmm.
I'm literally sitting here taking notes.
Yeah. So would it be safe to say, like, the first time you do something, you'll have a higher number, and then as you get kind of dialed in, you might be able to lower that? Okay, this ain't so risky anymore. We're pretty good at this. And so it is a bit subjective based on your experience and
because
familiarity with the project.
Yeah, because as you go through those, you can record those quarterly, and then take those RPN numbers and those process names and whatever that function is where the failure point could be, and then you can chart that in spreadsheets and do all kinds of different analysis of, hey, or when we're assigning these action items to these risks, how much are we reducing the RPN number, and how long is it taking us to evaluate that? You can put different metrics on it to see how long it's taking to improve. Also, how effective the actions are that you're putting into place.
So to stick with the example I gave, let's say, you get a part that has a geometry that you're not very accustomed to, or maybe it's a brand new material, like it's Inconel or titanium, and you're not used to doing that. You would put a, sort of a higher likelihood and a severity. Like, if this actually doesn't end up right, the customer is going to, not accept the parts. So that's a pretty high severity. And the likelihood is high because we're not very good at flat parts, or we're not very good at titanium. But as you then work through that, and would you, for the mitigation, is it just like brainstorming with the best people you have? It's like, all right, well, let's make some vacuum fixtures, or let's grind that surface, or let's get some guidance from our cutting tool manufacturer about how to cut titanium better. And then as you get better at that over multiple jobs, you reassess it. You're like, well, actually, our risk is out much lower because we're really good at that now. Is that kind of what we're talking about?
Yeah, you definitely want to have the people that are directly involved with that portion of the process. I mean, you don't want to have, you want to have your setup machinists involved with that conversation, because they're the ones that are actually doing this, rather than making that a top management decision. You want to get people involved, get them engaged, have their opinion matter, because at the end of the day, they're the one that's doing that job day in and day out for you. If you're going to get any valuable feedback, it's going to be from those folks.
Well, this ties into an earlier episode from the same series when we're talking about planning.
Yeah.
And we're talking about, don't just, quote a job, throw it over the wall from sales, but like, good luck, guys. Here's a job for you to do. Right. That's the non-risk-based thinking way to do it, as opposed to what you're describing. We always call it having like a war room planning session, right? You get the job, you bring in the key stakeholders, including the programmer and the machinist, and we're like, all right, here's what we have here on our plate. This is how we kind of estimated we might do it. Is that, what do you guys think about the plan, a better plan, and just kind of brainstorm and work it out together, right?
Right. Yeah. Cross-functional teams are the best way to attack anything, just because almost everybody has an opinion or some kind of input, and then when that input is respected and used at times, it makes people feel more important, and it helps the whole overall the quality mindset. It grows that way.
And Mike, I know that one of the things that we always espouse, that I think has become part of your practice, is having that quality planning happen way up front in a job, as opposed to, you finish the parts, you send it into the quality department, and they're like, what are these? And let's put together a first article inspection plan or whatever, right?
Yeah, we have our quality manager in the planning meeting, so that we're thinking about those things before we ever get to the floor. And
then at that point, are you also kicking off your balloon tagging process and getting your inspection plan actually put into the system? And
Yep. So we're from the very beginning. We're triggering all that. I think I would say probably 9 times out of 10 in our planning meeting, the drawings probably already bubbled.
Okay. So the team has already gotten to it right away when the order is received.
And then from there in the planning meeting, we're looking for those critical features maybe that need to be on the IPC, or, throughout that entire process, and like which op those will be done on and all that.
Yeah. I think, again, this overlaps so much with our episode about planning and being really proactive up front. I think just universally, so many problems can be solved in a shop. Fires can be extinguished before they even start as a spark later on by just a little bit more thorough planning and collaboration and brainstorming and sort of cross-functional team getting together and looking at things. And based on how new something is, how different something is, that probably determines the team, right? When you have a repeat job of something you've done a dozen times, you don't need the quality manager in there to like say, we've already made this 10 times before. It's it's on autopilot now. Very good. So one of the things that I think is worth talking about in terms of having an efficient QMS and quality process is really just talking about the tools you're using and how to approach it from the system that you're building. And of course, we're big advocates of having everything be paperless, of having the QMS functions and the quality functions be actually deeply integrated into the workflow of the manufacturing process, where you can define, exactly what the inspection criteria is at any step. You can do sort of your buy-off, sort of first article or first piece sort of inspection. And sometimes that's not even physically inspecting something. So that could be a a sign off from somebody that they've done a step of something and verified that it's good, right? That could be even an engineering step, or it could be, making sure the quality plan is fully developed and someone actually verifies with a check mark that, yep, I have done this, I've reviewed it, it's good to go. It could be the programmer has, verified that they have, done their, virtual simulation of the job before it hits the floor for doing, crash avoidance or, gouge avoidance.
Well, it goes all the way back to receiving the PO and making sure you got it. They sent it at the price you quoted, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
and they sent you the right rev of the drawing and the model, and exactly.
All your contract review processes and all that.
Yeah, because practically speaking, for decades, companies that had an ISO system or AS or whatever, right? The quality side of it, the records that would then be audited in an audit, they're kind of separate, right? They were spreadsheets, they were paper forms, they were Word documents, they're PDFs in a folder. And while that can be effective, it's by no means time efficient to try to maintain all that outside of your actual daily work of what you're doing to actually get jobs through the shop floor. And just any further thoughts, or because I'm sure you've seen both, right? The kind of separate QMS documentation approach, and then the, obviously, shameless plug, what we do today at ProShop, where it's really built into everything.
Yeah. I've had the hard copied everything and chasing folders around and things getting, lost, and just always trying to find the right piece of paper at the right time, right? And it was just always a struggle for one, just to even have to go track it down, to walk through the shop and go track down a job traveler, or to see how many parts are shipped out, how many are inspected, how many parts we got back from plating, things like that were just always a headache to try and keep track of. You'd have to go, by the time you walk to the one end of the shop and ask all those questions and get back to your office, and everybody asking you questions, that's probably about a 2-hour trip there and back. So
sure.
Yeah. So just getting everything electronic definitely makes an impact right away, just on how much time you'll save. And not only that, but losing critical documentation that is critical to finish the job and to complete the job properly. So having everything electronic is really the only way to go anymore. You won't be able to compete with the other people down the street if you're trying to do it with a hard copy system anymore, because everything's just gotten so electronic and more efficient to where people can do it cheaper. If the more efficient their processes are, the cheaper they can do the job, right? So
yeah, sure.
I think it's a philosophical question too. Do we want quality to be integrated throughout every function of our business, or do we want it to be separate? Okay, the obvious answer is integrated. So then why not have the documentation integrated into everything that we're doing instead of, separate?
Mm-hmm. And, it's an interesting, again, sort of theory concept, this idea of building in quality. Obviously, that does seem like the obvious answer, but it's not just about like reducing scrap rate or, making sure that you're, not making bad parts. It's really about eliminating waste out of every step of what your company does, right? If your sales team accepts an order from a customer and they have not sent the correct revision of the drawing, and then that gets flowed into, or the model, and that gets flowed into programming, and they program to the wrong model, and then they start making the wrong part. Obviously, you're talking about, scrapping some of those pieces, but you're really talking about a failure upstream of not doing this contract review process. And so it's not just quality. It's really about just making sure your company is running more efficiently and eliminating all the wastes of overproduction, or scrap is the obvious one, but just all these things. And it's hard to imagine not having that be a core tenet of any shop these days, because if you're busy just messing up left and right because people are not being thorough or not building in that sort of quality check, whether it's specifically related to, an actual piece of material and dimensional features on it, or you're talking about, more of a process of data flow and making sure that you have the right tools that you need, or the fixture you need, or the program is right, or you're putting it in the right kind of packaging. You're bubble wrapping it versus individual boxes or whatever. Yeah, it's just got to. It's got to.
I think it goes back to what we talked about last time. Shameless plug for my own company here, but we have the same person as the director of quality and continuous improvement.
Yeah.
Because it's as much about quality as it is value flowing through the business to the customer, and that means eliminating waste through every element of the process. Those things are intertwined.
Yeah. And so to just maybe dwell for a minute on just some of the core principles. Obviously, we talked about, getting rid of paper, and, if you don't have a system that supports that, or you can't afford a system, or choosing to do that right now, I would say, make it a principle that any paper that comes into your business from somewhere else, just scan it the moment it comes in the door. Just make that your policy, right? Something comes into receiving, whether it's a material cert or a packing slip, or someone mails you a paper drawing, whatever, just immediately scan it, get it into some kind of well-organized structure. So it's a hyperlink, or it's something that can easily be attached into your system. Obviously, if you can get rid of paper travelers and paper inspection reports, even setting it up in like a Office 365, Excel sheet or a Google sheet, so you can actually do those inspections digitally instead of putting them on paper. I'd say that's you're way further ahead if you can do that. All right, it's got to be something that people can collaborate on and see without having to be at the actual computer where that thing is happening, right? We had that exact problem very early, very, very early in the Pro CNC days. We knew we wanted to be a paperless shop, and so we started with Excel and Word from almost day one back in 97. But that was way before there was any shared documents. And so we'd invariably have someone, at a shop computer with an Excel file putting in inspection results. And we'd be like, hey, can you save that and close it so we can open it in the office and then
Right.
make a CSV to send our customer, right? Or whatever it was. So obviously these days, online collaboration for documents is just ubiquitous. So I'd say that's a pretty important thing to do. Those two things, keeping it digital in whatever records you're creating internally, and scanning the documents that come in from the outside immediately. Don't even put them in a like an inbox to be scanned later. Just make it your process that as soon as it comes in the door, like there's a scanner right there in the receiving bay, and that is where you scan it in.
Yeah, and scanners are cheap now. I mean, that shouldn't be a hurdle.
That's not the obstacle.
Yeah.
Hey, Metalworking Nation, Paul here. The countdown is on for Top Shops 2025, and I want you to be there. It's happening on November 11th and 12th in Charlotte, North Carolina at the NASCAR Hall of Fame. The best of the best in the machining industry will be all in one place, sharing strategies, best practices, and leveling up together. And optionally, come in the afternoon of the 10th to visit Roush Yates Manufacturing Solutions and see one of the most incredible machine shops in the world. If you've seen my videos of their shop, you know how amazing it is. That tour alone is worth the price of admission. Nick, Mike, and I will all be there, and we want you in the room with us. Registration is officially open, and the team at Top Shops has graciously offered listeners of Making Chips 20% off the registration price. That's $200 or more off with code MAK20. So go to topshopsevent.com, grab your spot now, and I hope to see you there.
So Jess, let's make this really practical. What are the strategies for implementation?
So the strategies that are most common that work for me is, you take it one step at a time. You have to break it up into small segments. If you try to look at it as one large project, it takes a lot out of everybody to keep track of where you're at and where you're trying to be. Also, just creating maybe a Gantt chart of where you expect to be, where you want to be with a given time frame. People's circumstances are different. Maybe a customer's requiring them to be certified by a certain date. Other people might have, plenty of time and they're on their own to decide on when they want to get certified. So it depends on really the time frame that you're looking at, on how much time it'll require and how much input it'll require. But you certainly want to make it a team effort rather than just put it on a quality manager to design a QMS and then try to train people on it. I would try to go in reverse where you include those people in that documentation as you're developing it, review it with them constantly, audit the processes with the documentation that you put into place. Make sure that, the old ISO term, do what you say what you do. Make sure that the flow charts and all the processes align with what you're actually doing, and then start training people on it. And then I think that gets people to buy in a lot sooner than you go into training too soon. The documentation isn't quite right. People, they see that happening where you're trying to train people on a certain procedure, a certain work instruction, and it's not really fine tuned yet. It's a bad look to employees. So I always try to make sure that it's a heavy review before you start implementing any training on any documentation or procedure or work instruction prior, just to alleviate that heartache. Sometimes that can do some undue damage to something that you're trying to include everybody in and implement in the business. So it's definitely worth looking into before you start trying to train people. And the tighter time frame that you have, the more difficult it is. So the more time you have, the less less a headache it is. But yeah.
So yeah, this is an elephant for sure. You got to eat it one bite at a time, and it's a lot easier to eat an elephant if you bring the whole cross-functional team to help you do it.
Yeah, for sure. Because if you identify your processes, you just start from front to back, and then like we were talking earlier, the output of that opportunity, when you gain that opportunity, the output of that process is that could be the input for 3 other processes. That could trigger you to procure material and tooling. That could trigger you to create a work order and do some planning. It could also trigger you to see what kind of inventory that you have in place, and do you really need to make all those parts? So there's a lot of different activities that can happen off of that first process. And that's what the whole idea of process approach is evaluating those things as they happen and making sure that you have a really, really detailed flow chart or some kind of work instruction that goes along with the procedure or the process, just so everybody is fully aware of the steps that it takes to get it done properly.
Okay, so yeah, those are some kind of, I would say, really solid, obvious, practical steps. Use a team, eat the elephant one bite at a time. But as far as the technology for QMS, we talked about an integrated system being better than kind of separate documentation. But what are some of the other aspects of the tech behind this?
So when you have a lot of electronic documentation, there's a lot of different levels of that too. So you could have, a lot of different Microsoft Office, a lot of templates, Word documents, Excel documents, and have a revision control on those types of things with like a document master list or just another document to keep track of that. But to be able to have all those talk to each other is somewhat difficult. Controlling the revision on things like that is a little bit difficult in those platforms as well, where people have access to them. You could really update something and just overwrite it and resave it. The only thing you have to rely on is like a date and time stamp of that when that file was saved. So there's different levels of the electronic documentation. Now there's, if you can have everything linked together in one ERP system where, say, you have a purchase order, vendor purchase order comes in, the parts that come in are damaged or the plating is bad on them and you have to reject them. You can create an RMA and an Excel spreadsheet, but then you have to link that to another Word document and things like that, where when you have that all linked together in one system, and you can have the RMA linked to the NCR, to the corrective action if need be, right to the purchase order or packing slip that it was generated from, or even from like a work order step, having that all inclusive is a huge, huge benefit and time saver for sure.
Yeah, it feels like the difference between, linking to something, which is, just giving you a path to seeing it, and then having a synchronized system where it's not just showing you the other place that it lives, it's actually integrated and influencing the process and synchronized in whatever the corrective action might be.
Yeah, I know when we went through our first audit that I was involved in prior to having a ERP system with integrated QMS to after, like it was, that first audit was like 3 or 4 days, and I would say 2 days of it was looking for data. right? They would ask a question. They'd want to see an example, and they'd say, okay, show me this. Well, we'd have to go through file folders and who saved that on their computer instead of the server, and who, and it, you'd walk away from the meeting for 30 minutes while everybody goes and finds everything, brings it back, then they break that down. Then they ask another question.
This is basically like us looking for our different PowerPoints and slides, and as part of making sure it's like, hey, where's that at?
Right.
Well, Paul emailed it. Don't search your set file.
Exactly.
Yes.
And,
yes.
And I do remember that next year after we had implemented ProShop and had all that integration, we still had that 3 or 4 day audit scheduled. It was the same auditor we'd had for the previous 3 or 4 years. And like midway through the second day, we were done because everything was integrated. Everything was there at your fingertip. You just, you need to see the cert on that. Here's the PO we bought it on. Here's the cert. Here's the inspection records of the part we made. Here's, the entire process. And we never left the room, essentially. And, but I think the bigger thing that, the technology piece did for us is, like when I'm talking with customers and they're like, well, how do you handle this? And how do you handle that? And, one of the things, kind of the simple way I put it for them is like, we'd have to circumvent our system to not follow our ISO and really AS standard, even though we're not AS, but like we'd have to try not to because it's all integrated. Right. So then that builds back on who you are, your culture, your everything. It's like everybody in the entire organization knows they've got to fill out that box or scan in that document or whatever the case might be that builds that complete QMS process around our entire value stream mapping.
Yeah. Well, one thing it definitely does that, we've seen time and again is that it coming back to when a company decides they want to get a certification, maybe they want to get into an industry and this is table stakes to being in the industry. But they're like, oh man, it's going to be a burden and it's going to be extra overhead. And it's the cost of doing business. We got to do it in order to compete in this market. It like flips that on its head to where it's like the burden is so little and you're instilling best practices into the business anyway,
right?
That you're actually less overhead, less, because there's less firefighting, there's less mistakes being made, and you're compliant along the way for the right reasons, as opposed to doing it as an afterthought just to pass the audit. And this idea that you can basically be ready for an audit at any time. It doesn't require prep work. It doesn't require scrambling to close out NCRs or get corrective actions created and then look like you've actually done some work on it. Then it takes that burden of overhead, which is also not, from a risk perspective, is not great if you have all these outstanding things that are just not tied up until the week before the audit.
Right.
And that's going to definitely cause problems in the company. But it lets you go from, spending a lot of time just on keeping things tidy to just spending more strategic time on the quality processes and improvements in the business. And I know like Corey on your team was your QA manager for a long time, right? And he, told me he's able to spend way more time actually like on tactical improvements in the business as opposed to just keeping up with documentation to try to make sure you can pass the audit.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, no, that's what's so great about having the integrated system is that, well, it's funny because, Paul, as you know, like Corey, so when I first bought Hill, he was like our lead welder, and then he went into inspection and then became in charge of inspection and now is charge of ops across the entire company.
I love that.
And I remember in that first year, he felt like, man, I picked up this quality stuff so quick and easy. And then like 6 months later or so, he realized, oh no, it's because the system's just there for me, right? Like it walked me through this. And he'll be the first to tell you, it's like, I can't even imagine doing this without an integrated system like this. Like it's too much to do. Okay. So Jess, as we start to wrap up, I have a question that always puzzles me and I've never had anybody to ask. So why do some shops get AS and ISO certified? Like, why both?
It's a good question. Some people, they don't think about getting that certification and having AS 9100 only, which would also mean that you are ISO 9001 certified. Now, if you have a certification that only says AS 9100 and not ISO, you have some opportunities that require an ISO 9001 certification. Those people that are requiring that, they may not understand that if you're ISO 13485 certified or AS 9100 certified, that you're also ISO 9001 certified as well, because that's the
you get it automatically.
Yeah.
If you go to the higher standard, you are automatically ISO
get
9001. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So
you're not paying for 2 audits.
No.
Okay.
So it's like I just got, or not just got, I've had global entry. And if you get global entry, you automatically get TSA pre-check.
Gotcha. Okay.
Same type
analogy.
of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you're trying to
I
do
see that all the
AS
time. I've just
and-
never understood why people did that.
I think you have to pay extra to have them both published on the certificate.
Oh.
But it'd be different if you were trying to do 13485 and AS 9100. Those would be 2 totally different audits.
What about ITAR? Is that automatically
Unrelated.
ISO?
No, not totally
disconnected.
Unrelated.
Yep, totally
Okay.
separate.
Sure.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, we covered a lot of really good stuff. I think you want to summarize the bullet points, Jess, or do you want me to take it?
No, go ahead.
I'd say, you got to, of course, have buy-in from the very top of the business. You got to take a team-based approach and when you were talking about that, I was thinking about Nick and lean and like buy-in, about like, because in some companies, this is a tangent, lean is a bit of like, oh, they're trying lean. Those guys are doing that, another kind of initiative of the week kind of thing.
It's like a crash diet instead of a lifestyle.
Yes, exactly. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I tried that lean stuff.
But companies often fail at it because they don't incorporate it into everything and they don't get buy-in from the people that are actually going to be doing it every day. And I think the best practice here in the QMS as well is that it's got to be like in the DNA of the business. This is how we run the business. It's reducing risk. It's continuous improvement. It's having great quality, not only in the parts, but in the processes and the outputs and the inputs between each department. And when you get that buy-in, and then you have effective tools like a database-driven system that's integrated with everything else, then it just flows and it makes it so much better.
Yeah.
And then I think the icing on the cake of all of that is that then becomes an incredible sales tool for winning business and winning new customers. Because when you can show a company that this is how this incredibly robust way we run our business, and how we're pretty much going to guarantee we're going to be on time with great quality for you, and the risk of doing business with us is much lower than the shop down the street, that is something that customers resonate with.
100%.
Yeah, totally agree. And for me, back to the kind of the philosophy of it all, if quality should be part of your DNA, then the quality system should be part of the DNA of your technology stack.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yep, for sure.
So
yeah, it really just cannot be a separate thing on the side. It has to be all integrated.
Yeah, if that's the one takeaway from the whole episode, then you're on the right track.
Yeah, it's a team effort for sure. If you get those roadblocks between, manufacturing and quality and, purchasing and manufacturing, and then you get all those walls put up, it makes it very, very difficult. With an ERP system, everything's very transparent. Anybody can see the status of anything at any given time, and the time that it saves is just critical. Just makes everybody's day a lot easier to manage.
Hey, it's Paul from Making Chips. If you've been burned by recruiters who don't understand manufacturing, you are not alone. That's exactly why we created Hire MFG Leaders. We're not just recruiters, we're current and former shop owners, and we know what it takes to lead in this industry. Whether you're hiring your next operations leader, sales manager, or production supervisor, we'll help you find someone who actually fits. Learn more at makingchips.com/hire.
Yeah, what do we know about making chips? We know that time is money. And if you don't have a quality system that saves you time, then you're not making chips.
And if you're not making chips,
you're not making money.
Bam!